Bienvenidos a todos, mi nombre es Ricardo Mora. Gracias a todos los que están conectando ahorita en línea. Les vamos a pedir que por favor mantengan sus micrófonos en mute por este tiempo. Yo soy Ricardo Mora, parte del comité organizador de The Bridge Accelerator, que es un programa binacional que ayuda está dedicado a ayudar a compañías a que se conecten a la cadena de valor de manufactura. En este momento me gustaría agradecer principalmente a Microsoft por ayudarnos en ser el sponsor mayor de este programa, junto con nuestro partner en El Paso, Texas, que es la organización Pioneers 21, con el doctor Carlos Martínez Vela. Somos parte del comité organizador. Y igualmente me gustaría agradecer a todos los sponsors de este programa que lo están haciendo posible para tantas compañías de nuestra región y juntos tratando de resolver el problema de conectarnos a lo que es la cadena de valor de cerca de 40 billones de dólares. Damos gracias el día de hoy a Tecma Group, a la ciudad de El Paso. Damos gracias a la Secretaría de Innovación y Desarrollo Económico del Estado de Chihuahua, a Seiza Medical, a Transtelco, a Hunt Family Foundation, a Fix en la Universidad de Arrowhead en Nuevo México, a Westar Bank, High Desert Capital, CIDER, Fidiapech, a la Ciudad Juárez Independiente, al Borderplex Alliance, a Desarrollo Económico de Chihuahua, a Detroit Axle y a Fundación Axel. Le damos muchas gracias a ellos, puesto que sin su esfuerzo este programa no sería posible. Es un programa que realmente ha sido un esfuerzo de muchas personas, el equipo dentro del comité de organización y todas estas compañías para hacer que nuestra comunidad y las empresas se puedan conectar a la cadena de valor. Es un programa que está hecho a largo plazo y estamos seguros que seguiremos uniendo a más compañías a esto. Un poco de temas de administración. Les pedimos que en el chat pongan cualquier comentario que tengan. Ahí lo pueden poner en el chat, está abierto para comentarios. Y las preguntas, en este caso, las vamos a manejar dirigidas directamente a mí. Al final de la sesión tendremos 10 o 15 minutos para preguntas y respuestas. Si son en español, no hay problema. Las estaremos contestando un servidor. Se la vamos a pasar a Andre Marquis y JJ Childress de parte de Microsoft. Entonces, si vienen en español, trataremos de traducirlas lo mejor posible y contestar las más que se puedan. Las preguntas van directamente a través de poner preguntas, nomás no las pongan al grupo entero, sino a Ricardo Mora para poder leerlas al final. Y cualquier comentario en el chat. Y en este momento me gustaría dar la bienvenida a Orman Millán, director del programa The Bridge Accelerator. Orman, bienvenido.
Hola, bienvenidos a todos y bienvenidos también. Estamos muy entusiasmados de que en este momento estamos lanzando la tercera generación. Y es un honor para nosotros el tener a 10 empresas que están relacionadas tanto en el enfoque humano, en la parte de integración, empresas de base tecnológica también, en la parte metalmecánica, en el desarrollo de software digital, que se unen a esta comunidad que tenemos ya de otras 21 empresas que estuvieron en la primera y segunda generación y estamos haciendo historia. Los invito a todos ustedes a que sean partícipes y vivan también esta experiencia junto con estas 10 compañías, a las empresas de la industria manufactura, a que les abran las puertas como para poder empezar a hacer esta fuerza y poder también empezar a trabajar no solamente en la región, sino en el desarrollo económico de los dos países. Aprovecho también, así como Ricardo, a dar agradecimiento a todos y cada uno de los que nos han ayudado a hacer esto posible. Así de Alejandra, Rudy y Leonel, muchas gracias por haber apoyado a estas compañías a través de Canacintra, todo el equipo, con Toño, con Gaby, con Lucy, que nos dio esta oportunidad como para poder hacer esto posible. Al grupo, como comentaba también Ricardo, del grupo de Axel, a Nancy, Diana, a Yair, a Pioneers 21 con Carlos, al Tech Hub de Ricardo, muchas gracias también con Fanny, con Alina, y pues también a todos y cada uno de los participantes de las primeras 2 generaciones que también nos ayudaron como para poder armar toda esta parte, y pues también a la anfitriona, a Mariana, que nos va a acompañar durante esta gran aventura, y espero que cada uno de los participantes pues esté dando también todo lo que toca en estos siguientes meses, en el que los invitamos a que cooperemos, a que participemos y nos preparamos también con los retos que vienen de 2021. Bienvenidos.
Gracias, Orman. Gracias. Y vamos a aprovechar también para darle unas palabras. JJ Childress representando a Microsoft. JJ, welcome. Omar, ¿quieres tomarlo tú? Le damos la bienvenida a Omar Saucedo o a JJ Childress, cualquiera de los dos que quisiera darnos.
Sí. Jay, I think your mic is not working. Bueno, buenos días a todos. Como bien lo comenta Orman, yo me sumo a los agradecimientos de todo el equipo. Este es un programa muy importante para la frontera, para nuestra región. Sabemos de la oportunidad que existe y que tenemos aquí de poder hacer una integración vertical y horizontal de procesos, productos y servicios. Como bien lo describe Ricardo, este es un programa clave para Microsoft que a través de TechSpark en nuestra región decide apoyar que es uno de los temas clave para nuestras empresas grandes, medianas, pero sobre todo las pequeñas. Yo les puedo compartir que el programa es una aceleradora, pero también es un laboratorio de innovación. Queremos descubrir juntos con nuestros participantes y la comunidad de empresas que se está formando. Ahorita decía Orman, de nuestras dos previas generaciones ya tenemos 21 empresas en esa comunidad, más estas 10 que se suman, pues ya andamos en 30 empresas en este laboratorio, ¿verdad? Y queremos que juntos vayamos descubriendo nuevas formas de innovación, de desarrollo de soluciones, adaptarnos a todos los cambios globales que están sucediendo. Sabemos que estamos enfrentando un nuevo modelo de desarrollo económico global. Sabemos que hay mucho talento en la región y tenemos afortunadamente muchas conexiones globales que nos pueden ir acompañando en este proceso. Pues quisiera saludarlos a todos ahorita, pero no despedirnos. Ojalá que durante el programa volvamos a reunirnos, ver cómo vamos y obviamente al concluir el programa donde tenemos un Demo Day, se dan a conocer muchas de las soluciones que se generaron. Esperamos tenerlos por ahí cerca de nueva cuenta. Muchas gracias a todos por hacer esto posible.
Gracias, Omar. Y parece que JJ ya se pudo, tiene audio. JJ, are you there? Just to say hello.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Good.
Okay, good deal. I think I'm going to attribute it to Zoom because we're not using Teams, but we'll go from there. But no, it's super exciting to be here for the kickoff of a third cohort, and really exciting what we've been able to partner with on the region over close to 3 years, and our signature project has been the Bridge Accelerator. And Microsoft has been excited about this region. When we first came here, we fell in love with El Paso. I'm born and raised here in El Paso, but knowing that our work would be incomplete if we also didn't include work in Ciudad Juarez. And the promise that our region has, and Omar touched on it, is this could be an innovation lab. Our region is what much of the rest of the world will look like, in the future. So we have a head start to be able to tackle and solve a lot of issues that are very unique to a binational, bilingual, bicultural, place, still with this unifying, sandbox. So we're happy to be here. We're enthused that we continue to find partners, both from the public and private sector to work on this, effort. It's really important that we as a community, own our destiny, and at a time where it's really important to have economic growth, where it's really important to be digitally transformed, to be able to, compete in the time of Corona, but also in the 21st century. The work that we're doing and the companies that we get to work with and learn from as part of the Bridge Accelerator is always exciting. So again, couldn't ask for, could probably ask for a little bit more optimal conditions, but in business, these are our conditions that we'll work with, and happy to improvise, adapt, overcome.
JJ, thank you very much. And I'm glad you were able to get your mic to work with Zoom. Anyways, I'm super excited to welcome Andre. So I'm going to give you a little bit of his bio, and he's done great things. He's a great friend of of everybody in our region and a great ally from San Francisco. So Andre Marquis is the former executive director of the Lester Center of Entrepreneurship and Innovation Acceleration Group at the University of California at Berkeley. Mr. Marquis has a long record of successful startups with particular focus on winning in markets where scalability is critical. 2 companies that he helped start and have a public initial offerings and were acquired by Amazon, and a third for over $190 million. The Chorus Group at Eli Lilly, which he co-founded, pioneered lean and agile business processes that run drug development programs 10x cheaper and 3 times faster than the industry average at a higher market success rate as well. His most recent startup is Amplix, a pharmaceutical that has raised over $145 million. Mr. Marquis is now helping large companies build global scale, agile business models, innovation to process and to manage dozens and hundreds of internal startups that continually start testing new business opportunities. By testing at scale and having repeatable, all digital business processes that run from ideation through the growing customers and revenue, companies are creating dozens of truly innovative $100 million revenue potential lines of business annually using their own employees. They do this 10 times cheaper and 3 times faster than traditional product development and are saving hundreds of millions of dollars as a result. Innovation is a lean and agile, repeatable and measurable product development process, not only mindset. Bosch recently won an Innovation Leader Award for its Agile Business Model Innovation work with HyperShift systems to run 200 internal startups globally. And this is just part of the work that Andre Marquis has been doing with many globally led companies. We're super excited to have him here and to share with us. Andre, welcome.
Thank you, Ricardo, and thank you for reading the full bio too. But probably wasn't necessary, but I'm very excited to be with you all, and this is really an inspiring program. So I'm going to give a presentation for the next sort of 40 minutes, about what I've learned about innovation and innovation co-creation with large companies. So why don't we get started with that, and I'll show you how to ask questions and all that as we get into it. So let me share my screen here. And we are in very tough times, and we are in very exciting times. So this presentation is really about helping you think a little bit bigger, think about the process, and like I said, really get the lessons of what we've learned from working with lots and lots of startups at UC Berkeley and doing lots and lots of corporate innovation. And I have to say, we're in very exciting times right now. Now, before we get started, I would like to do one thing. So first of all, as you said, mute your microphone. If you have questions, so we're going to have Q&A. We're going to stop at 9:50 in terms of me talking. But if you have questions, and these can be any questions, it can be about what I said. It can be about what T-Hub is doing. Hey, we've got some great Microsoft products involved as well. You know, the sponsors, whatever it is. But just click up on the box and send your question to Ricardo, and he will he'll compile those, and then we'll have a short Q&A session at the end. If you have other comments, just put them in the comment box for everyone. But before we get started, I would love to have a group photo. So I know many of you have turned off your video, which is great. You can leave it off for the program, but it would be great to get on right now, show us your faces. Entrepreneurship is something that's done as a community, and we would just come on for a couple minutes here and let's all be in this together. Unfortunately, I don't think you can see if I do the gallery view. Yeah, because you can't see that part of my screen, but
we'll do it for you, Andre.
Perfect.
So I think, Andre, you might need to take your presentation off to be able to see everybody.
You got it.
Yeah, for a second here.
There we go. Oh, good. Now I can see everybody too.
There you go. Everybody's got their camera on. Luis, ¿cómo estás?
Hey, everyone. Yeah, I just sometimes forget when we're on these big Zoom calls, like, you know, we're all here together. We can't be in an auditorium or whatever. But again, why I have so much respect for what you're all doing at T-Hub and with T-Hub is because you've created a great cross-border community. And it's one of the reasons I'm so excited to work with everyone here is because you just see the results that it brings, having this great community of people working together. So, are you good, Ricardo?
We're good.
All right. Thank you all for doing that. You can turn your cameras off, and we can get back to our presentation here. Good. Yeah, you can turn your video off. So, Ricardo already introduced me, so I won't talk about it too much. But one of the things that's been great is I've worked on a lot of different kinds of startups, and then coming to Berkeley, we've worked with lots and lots of different startups. So everything from social ventures, hardware, you know, biotech, and those kinds of things. And so, like I said, I'm trying to just distill the wisdom in this presentation about all the startups we've worked with. And we've started doing a lot more work with corporations too. And the reason I say we're in very exciting times is not only what you can do as startup entrepreneurs, but also corporations are really starting to adapt to be more lean, more agile, and better able to work with startups. So I won't say all those problems are solved, but we're in exciting times, and that's why it's great that you're part of this really exciting program. I always like to point this out. So if you look at this chart, if you look at the companies on the Fortune 1000 list in 1973, and then you look at the list again in 1983, 35% of those companies are new. So in the 1970s, 1980s, you know, turnover on the Fortune 1000, 35% over 10 years. If you look down at the bottom, the turnover now over the course of a decade in the Fortune 1000 is 70%. So companies, large companies need your innovations because more and more of them are, their business models are getting replaced more quickly. One way to think about this, you know, being on the Fortune 1000 is you have one of the best business models out there. A business that makes the most money is the most valued. Some other company comes along and they just have a better way of making money and you're out, okay? And that is happening more and more quickly. So large companies need your innovations. I'm just gonna give you an example. So we've been running a program with Bosch, and without getting too much into the details, Bosch is trying to create an internal process where they create internal startups and they create startups with partners and outside startups, and they do it the way a startup would. So in this case, they're starting with 700 ideas. They build a business model for about 270 of those. They run an 8-week program where they get out of the building, talk to customers. After about 200 teams a year do that, most of them decide to stop. So they figure out, you know, I thought I had this great idea. I talked to customers, wasn't such a good idea. About 68 of those actually go into, we build a product, we test it out on customers. After that, 68, about 14 turn into real startups with all kinds of really innovative business models. So Alethea Cattle is working with the largest banks in South America. They put ear tags on cows so that farmers can get a loan for that cow. So if the farmer can't pay their loan, the bank can come back and get their cows using this ear tag. So a very novel use of both banking, of these ear tags and Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, and a new business model for Bosch. And just so you know, Bosch is a huge global company. So, you know, sometimes we think large companies can't be agile, but again, this is changing. Bosch has scaled their internal pipeline quickly from 10 teams to over 200. Again, to me, this gets to the point of large companies are starting to change. So you as a startup have an opportunity to really get in there and work with some of these larger companies and get them as their partners. They are hungry for it. Companies are getting more efficient with this. So this program happens to be run by just 4 Bosch full-time employees. And over the long term, the other thing these large companies are figuring out is they can actually save money and save time by working with you as a startup. So, and truly new business models can come out of this. And this is one of the things I'm going to talk about today as we go through. Now, if you are being an innovator, what is your biggest problem? Someone should chat some things in the chat box if you want. What is your biggest problem if you're trying to be an innovator? So some people say it's raising money. That's something our students say all the time. If only someone would give me money, I could innovate more. Sometimes people say it's customers. I'm just giving you an example. A team we ran a program. Yeah, corporate speed. Thank you. Corporation. My number one innovation problem is companies can't keep up with us. But I look at it sort of a little bit differently. And this is just an example. So we ran a program by the creators of Shark Tank called America's Greatest Makers. And this was a team that also had a smart ear tag. And just here they are on the TV show. And when you look at this team, the question to answer is, would you invest in this startup? Would you want to partner with this startup? Would you want to invest in this startup?
You've heard of the Internet of Things. We're Herd Dog.
We're the Internet of Herds. Every cow wears a dog tag on its ear. The Security module inside monitors the cow's health and activity. At home, we can see the information about all the animals in the herd. We see that Daisy is still healthy.
Daisy's beating me in steps today.
Herd Dog takes the guesswork out of herd management because healthy herds means healthy humans and a healthy planet.
All right, Herd Dog. So, you see Herd Dog. Should you invest in Herd Dog? So you're an investor. You see Herd Dog. Should you invest in Herd Dog? Anybody in the chat? Yes, no, maybe, maybe not. Well, this is a really interesting question. This is a really interesting question. Ricardo's like, hey, let me ask more questions. Who's on the team? All that kind of stuff. Well, I think the answer always with the startup is, I have no idea whether I should invest in the startup. And this is my point, is you're doing business model innovation is most innovations fail. So if you're trying to keep doing what you're doing, that's fine. But you're going to be under margin pressure. You're going to be under price pressure, right? I mean, a lot of the manufacturing ecosystem is lowest cost provider who can meet the minimum quality target, right? And so if you want to make bigger margins, often the place to go is to a different business model. Now, the challenge of going to a new business model is usually you're wrong, okay? And there's all kinds of good data about if you're trying to build a new product, build a new business, you're probably gonna fail or it's not gonna work. Most people don't know this, but angel investors, we talk about angel investors with startups, just 7% of those angel investments generate 75% of the financial returns. So even though angels are often experts in their field, they're not good at predicting which startups are gonna win. Most people don't know this, but only 12% of venture capital firms outperform the stock market. So most venture capital firms do not make money. The great majority, okay? So don't think that venture capitalists have this figured out. You look at, hey, we're in Silicon Valley, we're so good at this, right? If you look at the top startup accelerator in Silicon Valley called Y Combinator, they had to make 940 investments to get 8 unicorns, right? Well under 1% of picking, is this going to be a big opportunity for us? And of course, everybody forgets Steve Jobs launched more failures than successes. I'm going to say that one more time. Steve Jobs had more failures than successes. I actually just wrote a blog post about this a couple months ago, but he had 4 times as many failures as successes. So everybody just forgets to tell those stories. So when you are working on your business model as a startup, please don't think you have it right. assume you have it wrong and that you're going to have to change and you're going to have to iterate and you're going to have to pivot. Okay, this is, if you take anything away from today's discussion, is you've got to keep working, but you have to be willing to make significant changes to what you're doing in order to be successful. And that's one of the reasons this T-Hub program is so great, because they're going to support you through that. Okay. Stay focused on customers, and I call it value delivery, but what do customers really need? What are their actual problems? And prove it to yourself. You know, you're not just doing something it's like, it's okay. If you can cut the price, that's okay. Try to do something that's solving a really significant problem for them. The best way to do that is get out of the building and talk to customers. Don't sell customers, listen to customers. What are their problems? What are they wrestling with? I know you have to sell your product, but have meetings where you're listening to your customers. What problems are they facing? What are the important problems? And are you solving an important problem? People will pay you more. Focus on the whole business model. Like when I showed you the ear tags, maybe there's something you can offer that's not, you know, your widget or what you're manufacturing or your service. Maybe you could partner with a bank and offer new financing mechanisms like that Bosch ear tag. Maybe you could partner with an IT company or someone who's a specialist in something else and work on digital integration, right? Get in there. We see teams doing artificial intelligence, blockchain. Just know those are very risky, right? Those are, you need to show you can generate benefit with those. Could you offer a new channel to your customer, something like that? So don't just think like, I make a product, I sell my product. Think about, there are a whole bunch of business model options that I could put a package together for my customer. Test quickly. So have these meetings where you're really talking about your customer and their problems, and are there bigger problems you can solve? And test new things. Could you put together an offering? Could you put together a prototype, or, you know, talk to the bank and have a meeting where it's you, your customer, and the bank talking together? How can you sort of test and learn quickly if this is really going to solve your customer problem? Don't worry about perfection when you're innovating. It's about trying to find where the big opportunity is, and that's why you've got to learn and be willing to pivot and change. Keep your mind open. This is very hard especially if you're working in a cost-sensitive business. You're always thinking about, like, how can we chop 5% here, 2% here, whatever. This is innovation. You want to be able to iterate quickly through different ideas. Let me just give you an example here. A lot of times people decide, I'm going to build this and offer to the customer. And that's a huge mistake. Understand your customer, understand the problem you're solving, then build your solution. Because again, no one can pick winners. If you understand the customer's problem, you can change what you offer as you learn with the customer. If you make the product first, you can't change. And here, let me just give you an example. So this is a team from a program we ran in Brazil, and they made food dryers. So they work in a university. They're interested in how to better dry foods. So they went out and they made a prototype, and they came into our program and talked to customers first, tried to listen to customers first. And so here is their journey.
Hi, I'm Victor, founder of QPrime Engineering and pursuing master's degree in mechanical engineering.
Hi, I am Luis Esterna. I am PhD candidate in mechanical engineering.
Hi, I'm Daniel, and I hold a master's degree in economics. We founded QPrime so we could bring to market innovative heat transfer technologies developed in the university, more specifically drying machines for foodstuffs and plants. At first, we thought the most important thing would be building prototypes so we could show it to future clients. What seemed to be a good idea made us spend a whole year developing a machine for the yerba mate. Worse, we found the buying process was much more complex than we thought at first, and the market much smaller. So we had a clear problem. We have technology, but who is our customer? In the customer discovery process, We focused on extensive search of markets that had drying problems that could relate to our technology. We talked to people from several markets, from textile and pasta industry managers to small-scale tobacco and tea farmers. Our best insights came when we really went out of the building and visited the countryside to talk to the farmers. For instance, we found a coffee farmer that had created himself a quite complex equipment, spending a good amount of cash in order to solve problems that we could have solved with our technology. The most interesting discovery we've had in the Lean Launchpad program was that there were markets with a huge potential and must-haves related to our business that we hadn't even considered before. So now we are starting a customer validation process to find a product market fit for coffee beans dryers.
Excellent. So this is the kind of process I encourage you to do. So, you've come into this program with an idea, you're going to pursue it, but I really encourage you to get out of the building, talk to different potential customers. I mean, of course, you're going to have lunch with your existing customers, you're going to have coffee, you're going to try to develop new customers in this business that you know. But when you are trying to innovate, you have to go talk to different kinds of customers. And this team was a great example. They're like, oh, we're going to build this dryer for yerba mate leaves and sell it to all these farms. And it turns out the drying process with yerba mate leaves was good enough. Turns out the drying process for coffee was much more challenging. And if you do a good job drying coffee, it gets a higher grade, it gets a higher price. And so they were basically helping their coffee farmers get a higher price for their beans. It wasn't just about drying. So I encourage you to get out of the building and look at new customers who would be willing to pay more, all that kind of stuff. Now, if you haven't, I want to recommend my favorite Microsoft product. I'm showing you PowerPoint, this presentation in PowerPoint, but please be on LinkedIn. Here in Silicon Valley, it's basically the #1 networking tool. So when you want to go do these customer interviews, they want to go talk to coffee farmers or people, purchasing managers at medium-sized manufacturing companies, whatever it is. Think about who you can find on LinkedIn. What's their job title? You can search by geography, all that kind of stuff, right? And try to talk to everyone. So don't just talk to the decision maker. It's important to talk to decision makers and understand what problem you're solving, but try to talk to the rest of the people in your network, the rest of the people who your product touches or your potential innovation touches, and have very open-ended conversations with them. Obviously, a lot of people post on social media, so one of the great ways to connect to people on LinkedIn is read something they wrote and posted on social media, and just send them a LinkedIn message and say, hey, I'd like to connect with you. We're in the same area, and I really liked what you wrote in this blog post. Sounds very simple. It's very easy to do. Spend the time to learn about your ecosystem. And again, that's a way you could connect with them, or just ask them directly. I actually often ask people questions on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm Andre. I'm trying to learn more about how companies do corporate innovation. Could I talk to you for 10 minutes about what your company is doing in corporate innovation? I do that almost every day. So you can do these very informal things on something like LinkedIn, and it often works. And just make sure you update your own profile. So when they go over and look at who you are, these social networking platforms, they're like, oh, this is the person who's interested in the kinds of things that I'm interested in. So because you have to get out of the building, just remember you can do it so much more efficiently, than you could do it 15 or 20 years ago. And I really recommend, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, get one and start to use it. So part of my obsession with this talk to customers, build your customer network, is because if you look at why startups fail, and I think I flashed the slide for half a second, but think in your head, why do you think startups fail? Why do they fail? Well, if you ask startups after they have failed, no market need. Now, if you could go do customer interviews and you could really build your network and start talking, just like our team that was, started with yerba mate leaves and figured out they really should be drying coffee. If they had been doing these customer interviews before they built their product, before they decided what their solution was and who their customer was and how they're going to charge for it and sort of all the bits of their business model, if they'd been more open to innovating, they would have figured out before they built it that there was no market need in yerba mate, okay? So just remember, you shouldn't be launching new products where it's no market need, because you should be able to figure out beforehand there is a market need. Okay, running out of cash. Look, if people won't pay you for what you do, you run out of cash. So I would argue reason 1 and reason 2 on the slide are the same. And I could talk about the rest of them, but you will notice many of these others in terms of pricing and cost and poor product and, et cetera. Those are really about the same thing, which is we didn't build the right thing for the right customer and they loved it so much they showered us with money. I know that sounds obvious when you say it, but so many startups don't test all of those components as they go through it. Who's the right customer? What is it they really care about? Why are they going to change their behavior to embrace our new product? How are we going to get paid? How are we going to make them happy? They don't really think it through before they start. But really the important lesson here is if you're trying to do something new, be sure customers like it before, and you can actually do that with customer interviews. And really, if you don't see rapid customer adoption, you're going to fail. But you can do these customer interviews first. So we're always big on finding the truth. A lot of times you'll feel committed to something because, oh, I'm the boss, or, oh, this is my idea and I've gotten everybody on board. Be willing to find the truth. Be willing to change your mind. I say this because, just look at the mobility marketplace, right? We always think of competition as what's at the bottom, right? Like, I'm an ice hockey fan because I grew up in the northern part of the US. And when I watch ice hockey, there are all kinds of ads for cars. And I always feel like this is sort of trying to answer the question, buy our gas-powered car. But of course, now when we look at the mobility world, they're electric cars. Ricardo has a nice one. But now customers are suddenly asking a different question. Should I buy a regular car or an electric car? Of course, when we have autonomous cars, that's a whole other segment. But now you'll see most of the focus on autonomous cars is actually in trucking, local trucking, local transportation, right? It's a very specific segment of the market. And of course, because I live in San Francisco and we have every ride sharing, whatever service known, I don't even own a car anymore. I gave up on my car. My point by showing you this is that market segments are always changing. Stuff people weren't willing to do a couple years ago, like buy an electric car, suddenly lots and lots of people are shifting. And one of the things you're trying to figure out when you're doing these customer interviews is when are your customers willing to change? There's a great TED Talk, and hopefully we can share the slides with you after, by Bill Gross, and he ran a big startup accelerator for years. And he looked at why his startups failed. And the number one reason was not they didn't have a good team, they didn't have a good idea, the business model was wrong, that they couldn't get funding. The number one reason is the timing was wrong. Meaning, oh, blockchain, all our customers, blockchain's the future. Everybody wants blockchain. Look, customers are not willing to change right now for blockchain. Maybe there's going to be a day in the future when they will, but the simple fact is, I saw some statistic, 90% of, corporate blockchain efforts have been shut down, right? There's just a very high failure rate for things like that. So when you're innovating, you can go test. Here, I'm going to jump ahead a couple slides just in the interest of time here. Just remember, you're almost certainly, wrong the first time. PayPal was for this thing called Palm Pilots. Facebook was something different. Wikipedia was supposed to be written by experts only. Mattel was a lawnmower company. Hotmail was a database company. There are all kinds of examples of how people had to change their company as they go. So obviously, I'm trying to do this very important message of be willing to change. The other thing is test in stages. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but the thing to think about is when you start, figure out if there's a real need for what you're doing. That's getting out of the building and talking to customers. Then you can build a minimum viable product and test whether customers actually adopt it. And rapid customer adoption is one of the best indicators that you're on the right path, that they really want to use it. If they don't really want to use it, your prototype or whatever, maybe you're not solving a big enough problem. Then you can worry about your sales process, your sales plan, and scaling. But if you don't understand your customer, what problem you're solving, don't worry about the sales and the selling yet, because if you find an important problem, it's much easier to sell. Let's put it that way. And then worry about, are we getting paid, and, can we scale it? But just remember, don't try to solve every problem at once. Focus on those empathy problems first. Think about your strategy. So I said how no one can pick winners, but we certainly know, like I said, if you look at the mobility space, that lots of things are changing in the mobility space. So have a strategy where you sort of lay out what are the key hypotheses you're testing. What are the sort of the bigger ideas? And a simple way to do that is, first of all, think about what kinds of customers are you trying to get? Are we trying to get customers who've never used this product before? It's the scooter, outside on the sidewalk. Someone's never ridden a scooter before or paid to ride a scooter. How can I get them into my business? That's one kind of customer. Are you trying to generate more revenue from your existing customers? Do digital integration or add product features or whatever. Are you trying to keep the customers you have? If you don't innovate, they're going to run over to someone who, has the equivalent of the electric car. I wouldn't focus when you're innovating on reducing your costs and everything. I would really look at getting more value from customers and try and figure out, why are they changing? Is there new technology coming in? Is there something new that their company can do? Did their company change their HR and incentive policies? Is something going on inside the company that you can take advantage of? Really know your customers and try and figure out what is it you're really trying to do in terms of getting customers, and what themes might deliver more value, or what changes to your business model would happen. And so one way to think about this is I would just do this, is just make a matrix on a sheet of paper and say, who are the different customers we could be targeting? And these are going to be, who might be a segment of new customers? Maybe you put that at the top. In the middle, what about our existing customers? And then on the vertical axis, just put some themes. Like, what do we think is changing for our customers? Are they willing to embrace a service model where they're not, paying per part, or they want financing, or, they're having some challenges on the financing side on their end, and on payment schedules? That could be your vertical column, your third column where it says service business models here. You could say new financing mechanisms. So one is, and then just start to write down ideas with your teams. What is something we could offer to our customers that might apply to different customer segments and embraces some of these trends? And so this can be a great place to start, because what's going to happen is you're going to pick one of these to test, right? It's sort of like, well, let's see if this service offering could work. Then you can go out and do your customer interviews. If you find out that one isn't working, you could cross it off. Now, maybe you try another financing one with a different customer segment. You go talk to your customers and you're like, nah, they're not really ready to adopt new financing models right now. Then suddenly you notice, like, everything you put in that third column is getting crossed off. So maybe now is not the time to do financing innovations. Does that make sense? Like, if you lay out some of these ideas, start talking to customers, put them into some of these columns roughly around who's the customer is and what do I think is the part of the business model that's changing, you can actually start to see patterns. And like I said, maybe financing is going to be big in 3 years, but it's not big right now. And again, I'm not saying it's what's true or not, but my point is you're starting to actually explore real business model changes that could give you a big advantage. be willing to co-create. And I'll just give you an example of a team that we had. How do you go higher in the organization? How do you deliver more value at the top? And I'll just give an example of a team we had called Bite Foods. And they actually started as a food delivery service to businesses. And it wasn't a high margin business. They weren't making a lot of money there. But they said, well, look, our customers have problems getting food to their employees. But what are some different strategies? What are some different themes to come up with a new way of delivering food to employees at companies? And so they actually ended up building a smart refrigerator, and it's very nice. You swipe, you pick what you want on the little, or I should say, you swipe your credit card on the little menu pad outside. You open the door, you just grab what you want because everything is tagged with RFID, and you close the door. And then about 5 minutes later, you get an email, and it charges you for the food. So it's really pick up. And this has been extremely successful in suburban office parks. So employers were really wondering, how can we keep employees in the building for lunch, but still offer them healthy options, right? So instead of, feeding my employees potato chips and soda out of those kinds of the vending machines we typically see, how could I offer my employees fresh food, but, keep them in the building, working for me. And so they actually went out and improved this business. They got it installed at a whole bunch of suburban office parks, at a lot of high-tech companies. They really did a great job running this business. And recently they changed. Now they're a private label fulfillment platform for large companies that have much bigger distribution in terms of employers. And so I thought this was just a great way of showing how a team built something that ultimately applied to a really large customer. So they knew their existing business model was not going to make a lot of money. We know we have to pivot from that. What are some ideas? What's happening in the, healthy food is a trend. Services are another trend. How could we provide some sort of healthy food service to customers? They came up with the refrigerator. But again, they were thinking about customer segments, and they were thinking about where is innovation happening. They did their customer interviews, of course, before they built the refrigerator. But once they found the problem, ultimately by proving out this business model, they were able actually to sell it and really get a lot of value out of this bigger business. So for businesses like yours, thinking in this way about what's one step I can take to get to a higher margin business, what's another step I could take to really make a solution that's going to be really big and scalable, you can do really with that, two label axis, customer segment by strategy. Okay, we are at the end of our time, so I'm just going to wrap up here because this was a lot for you to get. But I think really the bottom message is the reason to focus on innovation is because it puts you in the place of being critical and getting out of the competitive trap and sharing more value. That's why I showed you that Bosch program where they're doing 200 startups, is that's trying to create more value in a deep way. And that's really an important message and why you should innovate. So just to sort of revamp here, focus on your customers, get out of the building, look for new customer segments, but try to understand your customer first. Find the truth. There is no truth inside your building. So do those interviews, test new innovations. Yes, you have to run your existing business as well. I get it, but have an innovation hypothesis, because if you can find something big, this is where the big companies get created. They try a new business model. Test in stages, again, customer interviews first. Don't build a product first. Don't build a prototype first. Validate the problem. If you can build a prototype, is it getting customer traction quickly? Great. But validate the problem, and that a lot of customers have this problem. That's the scalability piece first. Again, keep thinking about what are the big changes that are happening and which customers does that apply to. So I call that a validation-driven strategy. But again, think about what the big ideas are, but validate that they're really solving customer problems. And the other great thing about really understanding your customers' innovation is you can really align value and get to a whole much higher paying opportunity. But you've got to test a lot. It's not going to happen immediately. So with that, that is my presentation. That was a lot in a short period of time, but I'd be happy to answer questions, especially about next steps and sort of how you can get started. So thank you, Ricardo, and everyone else.
Thank you, Andre. This is wonderful. This is great. We have our first question come in, and one of the questions is, understanding the customer, how do you recommend we talk to customers in these COVID times? So difficult to be in front of them.
You know, it's because I work with teams, you know, dozens and dozens of teams all the time. When COVID first came, there definitely was a dip in the number of customer interviews that we saw our teams doing. That's completely come back. So fortunately, if you start to do it now, you can just get people on a video conference. That's what I recommend. Is we're working on this new, you know, we're working on this new idea in supply chain financing. You know, could I get you on a 5 or 10-minute Zoom call to ask you a few questions? We're trying to bring a new solution, and I've heard you're really an expert in this field. You know, that's kind of your LinkedIn invite or your email or voicemail message or whatever. How can you get in? But we found people are actually willing to connect and talk. And frankly, I've seen, because you're trying to talk about something new and different, they're actually happy to get on the call with you because they're bored about grinding through the same stuff. So it applies as much. That's a long way of saying it applies as much as ever. That you should be able to get interviews. Yeah.
Thanks, Andre. Thanks. So just basically, we need to do them digitally, and we can get out there. It's no excuse. Why not to get them?
And people are happy to do it. And frankly, they're now more comfortable with video technology and everything. So some people who you couldn't have done that with, you know, a few months ago, well, now they actually know how to get on Zoom, or Microsoft Teams, and you know, those things. So great.
All right, sure. JJ, do you have the next question?
Yes. So, question I had: we are seeing that some big corporations are struggling to participate in real open innovation activities, to have patience and to embrace the risk. In your perspective, what are the 3 key factors to multiply this initiatives?
So, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, Andre.
Do you want my answer from how the company should be doing this, or how the startups should be doing this?
I think both would be good, and then I could even piggyback off of what we've just seen with our approach with Microsoft as well.
Perfect. Well, corporations are really undergoing a revolution in how they deal with startups, and they're trying to change internally. So I would say, from a startup perspective, you are still often going to be frustrated working with a large company, but one of the things I encourage you is, can you work with a team that's in one of their existing innovation programs or incubator programs or whatever? Can you do some research within that company to find, is there a team working on an idea that's sort of similar to yours? Because often those teams have permission to change business models. They're doing their own customer interviews, surely, and iterate and pivot. So often that can be a way in. And just on the company side, again, when we look at what companies like Bosch are doing, they're really just turning their own employees into entrepreneurs. It's like, we're going to make you an entrepreneur. You're going to go through the exact same exercises a startup would do. But because we're asking you to talk to customers and things like that, and not asking you to sort of build things and quit your job, they can actually do a lot more teams. So I think one of the things we're starting to see companies do is figure out ways to have more of their employees trying to co-create and innovate and partner as part of their regular job, as opposed to something that's sort of standing outside and, you know, they have to like quit their job and go work at the incubator or whatever. Yeah, I just see companies trying to get more people to be innovators, and I think that's the important trend to get to your question, JJ.
Yeah, and I definitely think that's a great approach. And one thing companies looking to do is getting really clear on what their outcomes, and expected outcomes. So the lack of patience, particularly where innovation at times is messy, it's inefficient, and at times that counteracts with a systematized corporation that's creating and capturing value in a systematic, way. And I think companies do recognize the need to disrupt their own business model. If they're not doing it, or trying to do it themselves, external could get in. But understanding what that commitment is, I think is just an exercise companies really need to go through. Yep. So from what we've seen, just different approaches on different teams within Microsoft has a really different approach.
Yeah, and Microsoft's been able to innovate at a an interesting at a great pace. I think it's interesting too because look, as if you're a startup entrepreneur, you still have to solve the problem somebody has today, right? Like they're not going to pay you to invest a problem they're going to have in the future. And a lot of times the value of these customer interviews is, our bigger vision is we're going to be on the cloud and we're going to leverage AI and, whatever. But I have to get in the door today. So I have to solve a very concrete problem for this company today. And then this is why I think having the sort of themes and customers is so important and working them together. Because then you can say, well, then we can layer in some AI. Then we can layer in, the cloud. Then we can layer in these things. Because we're providing this as a service, as an example, right? Like they used to just buy the thing from us and they serve it. But now that they're buying it as a service, we can start to layer in these other components that are gonna, help us be more innovative than our competitors. But you still do have to solve that short-term problem. But I do think companies are getting better at thinking, well, can we start working on our longer-term problems as well? So.
Thanks, Andre. Hey, we're getting a lot of questions, Andre, and I think we're probably going to go through two more. For the sake of time, go real quick here. We have Alejandra La Vega asking a question regarding the business model innovation. What do you recommend when two or more of the people involved are not in the same page? They're not aligned. Maybe some of them don't think they don't want to change the model and leave it as it is because they think it works fine. So how do you break that mold?
Well, this is why I said no customer need and timing, were sort of the two reasons, you see most things fail, or there's no customer need right now. So one way to think about it is that might be the wrong customer for you today. And there's something called the technology adoption curve, and it basically looks like a bell curve. And the way to think about it is your first customers often are people who are willing to try something really risky. Maybe your second customers are people who are like, this solves a problem for my business, but I'm a pretty small segment of customers. Like maybe I'm a small or medium enterprise. I'm not one of these big giant companies. And it could be for your startup, the segment you really need to hit to be successful is these large companies, but they're not going to try what your innovation is right now because it's too risky. And so one of the things I always think you have to go back and forth on as a startup is, we're willing to solve the problem for small and medium enterprise. But while we're doing that, we need to prove the things the large companies are going to need. It could be security. It could be, how much financing could you offer? It could be all kinds of different things. But even if your first customers, because I said the most important thing is you get customer traction, customers use it, customers love it. Even if you have to do that to begin with that smaller first customer segment, because they're the ones who are willing to make the changes first, keep trying to prove it for the big customer. Keep asking yourself the question, what do I need to prove for a big customer to be willing to make this change? Or what must have, as we call it, what's the value really have to be for who in that large company to make them shift their behavior? So a lot of times I think this question, like I said, it's a timing question, is for right now, you might only be able to work with the smaller companies, but if you really need to land that big company, one of the things you need to figure out is, are they going to be willing to change relatively soon? If we're successful with these smaller, more focused customers, are we going to be able to get the mainstream, or is the mainstream just not ready? Just to give you a very quick example from my own life, I collaborated with one of the first companies to build super scalable data analysis in the cloud. I happen to have sold a company at Amazon. So I was one of the first people using this Amazon Web Services, super scalable, pay by the minute infrastructure. So I encourage them to at least take a look at that. I would go out on sales meetings and the customers would say, I will never put my data on the cloud. Right? The big customers that really mattered said, I will never put my data on the cloud. Obviously, all of those companies now have data on the cloud. And it's not just Amazon. Microsoft has an amazing cloud as well, right? So cloud is now a thing. But the point was, when we were starting that company, the customers that really mattered were not going to change anytime soon. Anytime soon. It was years before they really started to embrace the cloud. So don't put yourself in that situation. If that big customer that really needs to be successful is real, it's going to be years before they're willing to change. Pivot, do something different. And that's why you need to do customer interviews, because you're never going to figure that out unless you're talking to people who are not your customers today. So that was a great question, which is why it deserved a longer answer.
Yeah, and we're at 10:04, so just in the sake of time, I know we still have people connected. We'll take a last question, Memo, and we're going to send you the list of questions separately, Andre, so we can get to them.
Perfect.
And when would you recommend moving out of the idea of being a startup that looks to be a unicorn and move to a small but solid company? Any tips that companies should look into?
Well, one of the things I like about that Bill Gross analysis saying timing is what matters most, like when are your customers willing to change, is look, we all have to stay in business and get paid. So it's fine if you're doing something right now, but I think you always should be looking for the unicorn. You always should have that, who are customers that matter to me? What do I think is changing in the world that might change what my customers want to do? I think you should have that in front of you and constantly be having these conversations, because when the change is going to happen and the customers are going to be willing to embrace something that's going to turn into a unicorn, you've got to be testing. And so always have that in your mind. The other thing I will say is, by understanding what trends customers are adopting, you can start to change your business today. I talk about this all the time, right? People are like, well, we've got everything's on PCs, it sits in our office, all of our manufacturing, we're not doing anything in the cloud or whatever. And I said, well, it's a question. Do you want to start to work with people who understand the cloud, understand IT integration, start to do some little projects, start to get to know some people you might want to work with who understand this stuff? Like, start doing that stuff now if you think that's going to be important in the future, because you'll learn and you'll create those relationships. So suddenly, the company you're supplying is like, well, you've got to be on our, you've got to be on our purchasing system and whatever. If you haven't been working, if you didn't know that was coming and you haven't been working away at it, you're going to be completely unprepared for that change. And by understanding some of these newer things in smaller ways, you might suddenly have the idea for like, oh my goodness, we can put these two things together and really create something new for our customers, and let's go talk to them about it. And that's where the unicorn ideas come from. So I always think you always have to be both. You got to stay in business, you got to pay your employees, but you can be thinking, you can be talking to people, you can try to figure out when could this be good, which customer is this for, and what does it really look like in terms of the business. Should always be doing that, always. Things are changing faster than ever. That's why I showed you that Fortune 1000 thing at the beginning of the talk. Businesses are having to innovate faster than ever. Companies that have bad business models are going out of business faster, or shrinking faster than ever. Don't let that be you, and don't let that be your partners. You don't want your partners to go down either. You want them to be successful. So you can often be a leader.
Perfect, Andre. Well, this is awesome. In the sake of time, we're going to wrap it up, and we thank you for taking the time to talk to us about your experience, and I know that you're a close friend. We had a lot of questions that were not answered. We're going to tally them all up and try and get back to these questions. Hopefully they put their email on the login, And as well, we've had some requests for the video. Is it okay if we share it with everybody that logged in?
Absolutely. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And also they're asking for the presentation if possible.
Yep. And I will send that to you as well.
All right. So we'll be sending a full, just a summary with a video link and the presentation. And anybody who wants to meet Andre, we can make that presentation.
And
Perfect.
I just want to say, we need innovation in both our countries. And as I sort of look at the times we have today, it's more and more necessary. So I just salute you for all your hard work, because the work you're doing is very important. It can seem like a grind day to day. Am I just doing something small? Is this going to work? You know, are we going to get paid enough money this month? But the work you do in innovating and changing what we do is so important to making a prosperous future for all of us. So I just salute you for all your hard work in advance, and just thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to all the team that makes this happen. I mean, it's a bunch of people that are preaching the gospel of innovation in our region on both sides of the border. So we're excited to be part of it. Awesome. Andre, thank you very much. Thank you for your time, and look forward to continued conversations and to have you in person. Hopefully next year.
I would love that. I would love nothing more.
All right, Andre. Take care. Gracias
Thank you
a
all.
todos. Gracias.